We just need them to start giving out some medals for film collecting. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. In honor of opening day of the Paris 2024 Summer Olympic Games, today we're going to be taking a look at the Olympic movies in my Blu-ray collection. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, rank lists, and, fairly recently, collection videos. You guys seem to enjoy my Shark Blu-ray collection video during Shark Week, and I had a few people sending me messages asking for more videos like this. So, I figured the Olympics would be another good topical opportunity. I've got a stack of Olympic-related movies here that we're going to go through. Like in my past collection video, I really tried to keep my picks focused on the topic at hand, so there are a few movies that reference the Olympics that I didn't include, like Molly's Game, for instance. That said, we've kind of got a diverse set of films here, and one video game actually. I'm not going to be ranking these movies here or anything, we're just going to go through these alphabetically, and I'll briefly talk about each of them. Usually I start with numbers when I go alphabetically, but we're actually going to flip that around and do numbers at the end of the movie section, right before I talk about that video game. So let's go for the gold and jump into these. So we're going to be kicking things off with my favorite Olympic movie, and that's Cool Runnings. So this one is a Disney film, 1993, very loosely based on a true story about the Jamaican bobsled team. So this is centered around the 1988 Calgary Olympics. There are actually a couple movies that I've got here that focus on that particular Olympic Games. But again, like I said, based on a true story, but obviously very Disney-fied. They definitely changed some key things towards the end in terms of what actually happens with the real team. But this was always a really fun one for me. I think most people who don't have nostalgia for this movie will probably think it's just okay. This was, I believe it was John Candy's final film. I think this was a posthumously released film, actually. But he's really good in it. He plays their coach. We've kind of got this ragtag group of sprinters and a derby car racing kind of guy. But they're runners. They were intending to be in the Summer Olympics and get kind of roped into being bobsledders. So it's a really, it's a good sort of underdog sports story. It has some really great lines, some really memorable stuff. I'm sure other 90s kids really into it, feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme, get on up, it's bobsledding time. But this one, this particular release is one of the Disney Movie Club exclusives that doesn't even exist anymore, unfortunately. So I'm not sure if this one is really available to pick up anywhere anymore for any sort of reasonable price, but I'll look and see, and if it is, I'll be sure to post that link in the comments below. Or in the description below. But anyway, Cool Runnings, love this one, had a really big impact on me, got me really interested in bobsled, and, this was the reason when I was a kid I really wanted to go bobsledding, and so I actually did at the Lake Placid Olympic Center. Went bobsledding with my dad once when I was a kid, and I actually bobsledded again this past year, this January, not even past year, this year, 2024 in January. When I was at Sundance, I went to the Salt Lake City, the Salt Lake Olympic Center, and bobsledded there as well. So I've bobsledded, I'm not sure what the right word is, but I'll say bobsledded. So I bobsledded at both the U.S. Olympic tracks now because of this. And again, kind of a little anecdotal thing here, but when I was a kid, we had, it still exists, there's this theme park called The Great Escape, semi-close to where I grew up in Lake George, New York. The Great Escape's there. And they used to have this ride called the Alpine Bobsled, and it was kind of this roller coaster that, it was weird, it didn't really have a track, you kind of went down this like half pipe thing, it was wild, but they had different roller coaster cars, and they were painted for the different countries because it's meant to be Olympics. And everybody used to try to get into the U.S. Bobsled. I always wanted the Jamaica bobsled, to the point where I would like time it and be like, okay, the Jamaican bobsled's after the Switzerland one, and I know that's two more bobsleds away. So I would like let people pass me in line just so I could be in the Jamaican bobsled. So Cool Runnings obviously had a pretty big impact on me. Next up, we have another Winter Olympics related movie, and that's Eddie the Eagle. So this one is another based on a true story, kind of made some changes sort of film, biographical film. And this one was more recent, 2015, starring Taron Egerton as Michael Edwards, or Eddie the Eagle. And so again, I mentioned Calgary Olympics, 1988. Again, that's kind of the focus of this film. And we've got this guy, Eddie the Eagle. He was originally kind of, I think, downhill skiing. I can't remember what his original event was. But basically, he wasn't good enough to qualify for the British team. And so he decided to take up ski jumping. And so he wanted to ski jump because at the time there had been like a 60-year stretch where there was no British Olympic ski jumping team. And so, you know, there wasn't a lot of competition that he had to go against in order to make that, other than to qualify at an Olympic level. And so this is about his journey to get to that point so that he could live out his Olympic dreams. And it's, you know, it's another one that's kind of got all those hallmarks of a sort of cheesy sports drama, inspirational story kind of thing, but it's good performance, and an interesting story. And it's one I haven't revisited actually in quite a while, but I did like it. I think I've only seen it the one time, but I do enjoy this one. And again, Calgary Olympics. I don't know what it is about the movies for that particular Olympic Games, but we've got another one. Switching gears to a Summer Olympics, or kind of Olympics adjacent movie, less focused on the actual Olympic Games than the past few, but we've got Foxcatcher. So this one is released around the same time, 2014, I think, for this one. And this one stars Steve Carell, Channing Tatum, and Mark Ruffalo. So Steve Carell plays John DuPont, and Channing Tatum and Mark Ruffalo are wrestling brothers. And so they were in the 1984 Olympics. So they were, I think, medalists at the LA Games. And John DuPont's like really into wrestling, like kind of a fan, really wants to build up a team for the 88 Olympics. Seoul, I believe, right? Seoul was the 88 Olympics. So he's trying to build this team, so he kind of hires these guys on to be sort of coaches and advisors and trying to really build up this team. And this it's different, right? Like it's not an Olympic movie in the same way that those past two were. This one's more of a dark crime drama. I don't want to spoil anything, and if you're potentially interested in watching this movie and you've never heard of any of these people, don't look anything up. Just watch the movie, then look up the information after the fact, because it's a kind of crazy story and wild what goes on. Again, creative licenses, but taken. But this one is intense in ways that you wouldn't expect. Not really intense in a sports drama kind of way, but in a crime drama, just dark and kind of weird and off-putting, but just from a true story kind of off-putting way. Steve Carell, really creepy, really good, but intense in this movie. So that's another, probably, well, one of our most Olympics adjacent film in this particular stack of films. Next up, we are back to the Winter Olympics, and we've got I, Tonya. So this one, again, kind of Olympics adjacent, but has a lot of Olympics lead up sort of stuff to it. So this is a film directed by Craig Gillespie, starring Margot Robbie as Tonya Harding, and this is kind of this interesting like mockumentary kind of unreliable narrator, sort of jumping all over the place, dark comedy. So again, definitely takes some potential creative licenses with a true story. It's based on Tanya Harding's story, I believe, based on her autobiography or something along those lines. So it's sort of her side of events, her side of the story. But there is some Olympic stuff, obviously, figure skating in this case. And she, so the movie came out in 2017, and she competed in the 1992 Albertville Olympics. And this was the time actually when we switched from the 2 Olympics on the same year to the alternating or every 2 years schedule. So this time period for Winter Olympics was really nice, I guess, for the competitors because they had a chance of getting in 2 years apart rather than waiting 4 years, right? So there was Albertville in 92, and then when they switched again to that Summer Olympic offset kind of schedule, we had the 94 Lillehammer Olympics. And so that was the lead up with the whole Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan thing, was going into the Lillehammer Olympics and her trying, both of them really trying to make the team. And so this, again, kind of Olympics adjacent, but there are some Olympic scenes and obviously a lot of controversy, a lot of things related to the Olympics and Olympic trials in this case. But this one, it's good. It's funny. It's very different from most of these other movies. I think the only, well, actually I was going to say the only comedy, but I guess Cool Runnings is probably classified as a comedy as well. But this one's much darker as a comedy. Next one, definitely not a comedy. We are switching back to the Summer Olympics and again, kind of diving into a very Olympics adjacent kind of film. So this isn't actually about the Olympic Games themselves, but it's one that I wanted to include because it is very close to the Olympics, and that's Richard Jewell. So this one is set, another kind of based on a true story tale. This one is set during the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. And so in this case, we've got a film directed by Clint Eastwood, starring Paul Walter Hauser. Weirdly, he was also in I, Tonya. Maybe not the guy that you would expect to be so prevalent in Olympics movies, but apparently he is. But this one is about the investigation into the bombing that occurred at the Olympic, the Centennial Olympic Park in 1996. And so he, Richard Jewell, is a security guard who's working this concert that was occurring in the park, sees a suspicious backpack, and kind of gets things moving to try to protect a bunch of people. And then this bombing occurs and he comes under scrutiny. He's a suspect, and it's all about the investigation into that and kind of how he was really maybe subject to some suspect, ways of going about this investigation. And so this one, especially for like Clint Eastwood's later films, these ones we've had recently from him, this is one of the better ones in my opinion. Again, the story, there's certainly some changes made, definitely some simplifications to the story and Richard Jewell's involvement, but a pretty solid one. But again, not a sports movie. This is definitely a biographical sort of drama, sort of crime investigation, sort of just general, personal drama kind of movie. But an interesting one, especially if you don't care about sports and aren't really super into the Olympics, but want an interesting story. That is one. And this last of the lettered Olympics ones, Summer Olympics again, but again, kind of Olympic adjacent. I hesitated on including this one, but ended up going with it, especially since I included Richard Jewell, and that's Unbroken. So this one was directed by Angelina Jolie, 2014, I believe. And so it tells the story of Louis Zamperini, played by Jack O'Connell in the movie. And he was a runner. He was in the Olympics in 36, the Berlin Olympics, same ones that Jesse Owens competed in. And I'm trying to remember what his event was, 5,000 meter maybe? But anyway, he was a runner in the Olympics, did fairly well, I think. And later on, during World War II, he was a bombardier. His plane went down. He and his fellow pilots and fellow, I think he was in the army, people, whatever, service people were like out at sea. There's like shark attacks. It's intense, but eventually they get picked up in Japan, and he is a prisoner of war. And this is really, it's a really intense movie, right? It's one that's really supposed to be inspirational, and it's showing how, somebody can overcome like really intense situations, overcome the odds. And in this case, right, the Olympic stuff kind of keeps coming back into play because his training helped him, and it helped with his, mental fortitude to get through things. But he's also especially targeted at this POW camp because he's recognized, and he's sort of this celebrity at the camp, and so he's targeted and kind of tortured a little bit extra. Again, true story with some obvious changes, but a pretty good one. Again, haven't seen this in a while, and I know there was a sequel that I don't think included anybody who was in the original movie. I've never seen the sequel, so I can't speak to that one. But this one is not too bad. So now we've got to turn our attention to the numbers. And so you probably, some of you at least, probably guessed where this was going. So I have a big thing here that's going to make a lot of noise when I move it, so I apologize for the noises it's going to make. But I have the Criterion Olympic set, so 100 years of Olympic films. So this thing is a monster, as you can tell. It doesn't even fit in my shelves normally. Like, I have to put it down in a different section. I can't even fit it up with my numbers. I'm sorry, it keeps making these noises. I knew it was going to. But this monster has 53 films in it. So I have a few Olympic movies, but most of these are feature length. There are a handful in here that are shorts. So some are really short. I think there's a couple. There's one on like horse jumping and stuff. I think there's like a dressage movie maybe that's like in the 6 to 10 minute range, but even the shorts are like half an hour for the most part. But there are some really long ones in here. There are some, like the Amsterdam Olympics, the 1928 Olympic Games. Those ones are like 4 hours, 4.5 hours long. So there's some really, really massive movies in here. But let me try to show some stuff related to this and try not to drop anything. Okay, so we've got this kind of elaborate setup here. So there's a book that comes along with it that's really helpful. So I have watched all of these movies. I actually kind of binge watched them over like a couple weeks span back in 2022, I want to say. It was around Christmas. I watched most of these with my dad, actually. I'm sure he really enjoyed that, watching hours and hours and hours of Olympic movies when I was home for Christmas. But anyway, I think it's really interesting. I've always liked the Olympics. So this book has a lot of really cool information, a lot of really cool pictures. And there's a couple pages on each of the Olympics that are included as movies in here. So lots of really useful information that was great to read after or before watching each of the films. And then all the movies are in here as kind of these discs in sleeves like this. I realized for this, like, there's so much. And honestly, some of them kind of bleed together since it's been a handful of years since I watched all of these in like a 2-week span. So I'm not going to go through and like talk about every single one of these or even mention all of these. If you are interested in something like that, I don't know, maybe there's going to be like Olympic film super fans that find this video. If you're genuinely interested in something like that, I do have like a ranking of these movies that I did for myself that I don't have a video up for, but if people are interested, I could potentially put together a video specifically on this set and on the Olympic films. And I could include the ones that aren't even in here. You know, this only goes from 1912, so the Stockholm Games, to the 2012 London Summer Olympics with a movie called First. But there are, you know, new movies made for each of the Olympics. So there are a couple more that I've seen beyond this. You know, we've got the Sochi Olympics, the Rio, Pyeongchang, and I know Tokyo had movies. There were 2 movies, but I don't think they're like readily available yet. At least I haven't seen them yet. But those other ones I have seen. So I could potentially include those even though they're not in this video. Or in this set. But, you know, just some highlights, I guess, here. This first one, the 1912 Stockholm Games, you wouldn't think that this would necessarily be the most interesting thing or, like, the best quality, but wow, does that look good. Like, the quality of the video is really fantastic. And it's super interesting seeing it. And quite a few of those early ones are really fun to watch because so many people in the crowd have no idea what's going on. Like, I'm sure a lot of them had never even seen, like, a still camera, let alone a movie camera before. So there are just so many shots of people, like, looking at it, and, you know, they're, like, tilting their head like a dog, you know, they're like, what is that thing? And they're, like, looking, or there's people that are, like, posing because they think it's a still photograph, and so they pose and they hold a position for a really long time, and then they're kind of like, what? And, like, they don't understand what's going on. But it's really interesting, and a lot of those ones, it's so cool to see, just all the different countries, especially the opening ceremony for a lot of these, the different, uniforms and the different things that each of the countries are wearing over the years. It's really interesting to see that. A lot of these earlier films were made by people in that country, the host country. That kind of changes later on. But it's interesting because it kind of gives a certain flavor to each of them. And some of them are much more like propaganda-y than others. You know, obviously the Berlin Olympics, both 36, both of the German ones have some heavy stuff with that. The Moscow Olympics in 80 have some interesting stuff. That one's just really interesting because at least in the US, right, like the US team didn't participate in that one, but a movie was still made, you know, the Olympics still happened. So it's interesting to see that kind of thing. A lot of the later ones started to be a little more homogenized in terms of the filmmaking. Bud Greenspan did a lot of the movies from, I want to say, like the either early 90s, might have been even late 80s through, I can't remember what one he started with. It might have been the 84 Olympics. But there's some really good ones in here, and a pretty good mix of the summer and winter games. There are a handful of Olympics that aren't included, because I'm trying to remember. I think most of them did have a film, but some of the films are considered lost. I want to say that was the issue. So for me, I had mentioned earlier that I've gone bobsledding, right? And I bobsledded at Lake Placid. And so Lake Placid is the closest Olympics venue to where I'm from. And so I was really looking forward to the Lake Placid ones, because we've had 2 Olympics at Lake Placid, 32 and 80. 80. And the 32 one, there is no film. I think that was one that there used to be, but it was lost or something like that. And then we've got 80 does have one, but it's a short film. It's only like 26 minutes long. It's more like a commercial or something than anything else. But surprisingly, there are some really good ones in here. I guess not surprisingly, but from a documentary standpoint. There are some really strong ones. The Atlanta Games, really good. The Tokyo Games, Tokyo Olympiad. That one was released as a separate thing by Criterion at some point before they ever put out the 100 Years set. I like the Mexico City one a lot. That one's a strong documentary. I enjoy the Athens, 2004 Athens. I have a soft spot for the, really for the ones I was alive for and really paying attention to, so that kind of started for me with the, probably the Atlanta Games were the first ones I was really paying attention to. So Atlanta, the Nagano, but for me, Winter Olympics, and probably my favorite Olympics overall, were the Salt Lake City Olympics. So there's some fun stuff in here. Like I said, the later ones, not necessarily as great, not quite as interesting, but a lot of variety in here. Whether or not I will ever watch all of these again, that's still to be determined, I guess. Probably not. Certainly not over the span of a few weeks. That was insane. But I'm still glad I have this set. Like, it has some really interesting stuff, and it's a cool thing to have as a resource to be able to look at and to be able to watch if I want to. And so I'm glad I have this set. But like I said, if you guys are interested in something more in-depth about that set, I would be game for doing something related to that, ranking them or like attempting to rank them. It's like, how do you rank these? But if you're interested in something like that, let me know. So beyond the films here, I do have one more thing, like I mentioned. I actually have an Olympics video game. So who would have that? I don't know, other than me. I doubt many people have this game. If you do, if you played this game, if you still have it, let me know, because I feel like there are not many of us. But I have the Salt Lake 2002 PS2 game. So this, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but the Salt Lake City games were like my favorite Olympics. I loved watching these games. It was so exciting, and I was so hyped for it that I actually had this before the Olympics. I was playing this, or I got this for Christmas, playing this a lot. I was really, I don't know why, but winter sports games on PlayStation, I really enjoyed, like Cool Borders. If anybody remembers Cool Borders, that series was like my favorite game when I was a kid. So I had like Cool Borders 1 through 4 plus Cool Borders 2001 on PS2. But anyway, this game, I played it a lot. I used to make my dad play it a lot with me as well. But this was, I enjoyed it, right? I have good memories of this game, but it's not a particularly good game. It's unique. You play a lot of different events. So there's snowboard slalom, there's like freestyle aerial skiing, there's ski jumping, there's downhill, there's downhill slalom, and then there's bobsledding. And so this game is like really hard. Like, the controls are so finicky. It's so hard to get anything to ever do what you want it to do. So some of these ones, you have to do these like button combinations just to land something, and it's like impossible. And like bobsledding, you flip over all the time. I just remember, like, I don't know. Like I said, I used to play this with my dad, who, he, I'm sure he will agree when he's watching this video. He was never the most dexterous video game player, so he could play, and he tried and he did some stuff, but, button mashing was never his forte. I can't tell you the number of times I would be like crying laughing because he would have his bobsled guys like run, and he would just let go of the bobsled, and it would just go down the track without his bobsled guys in it, or just like, not landing anything ever. This was a hard game, but this was a game that had a really good soundtrack, right? Like, so, I was like a lot of 90s kids, right? Obviously, I had Tony Hawk, Pro Skater, and all that stuff, so I was really into the punk music already. But how many people really talk about the Salt Lake 2002 game for some punk and pop punk? But this had some good stuff on the soundtrack. The Impossibles were on here. Blue Line Medic, The Stereo, Pollen. So there was some good music on here. And I used to do some fun stuff because there were like, I don't even know, 8 songs total. So I would have like the ski person like clap to the beat because I would get so bored playing it. But anyway, so if anybody has this game, let me know, because this was something. And like I said, I can't imagine there are all that many people who still have this. All right, so that was my Olympic Blu-ray collection as of opening day of the summer 2024 games. Pretty evenly split between summer and winter Olympics. So what do you think of these movies? Which Olympic films are in your own collection? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, if you're interested in meddling in any of these Olympic movies yourself, I do have affiliate links to all of them, or almost all of them, in the description below. I do get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these Olympic movies. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this Blu-ray collection video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies. The way life should be.